What's up, Instagram? Hopefully you guys can see us and hear us. We're still working on the audio solution. We tried to finagle a thing that didn't work. Brandon totally just dropped the ball on it.
We failed catastrophically.
Yeah, yep. But good to see you guys. And obviously we can't interact with you because we're both sitting over here and our fingers are not that long.
We need an intern to tell us, hey,
we do need like a...
Jim in Tulsa says what's up.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That might take away from the podcast, though.
What are kids doing right now? Like at 12 o'clock?
My kids are in school.
I think most kids are in school.
Yeah, I said Jim, not kids.
No, but I'm thinking like what kids...
Well,
like,
interns. I mean, those are technically adults.
Okay.
Most kids in college are at least 18.
I bet we could find an intern to come in on Monday, and he could get us coffee and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh!
He could make coffee for everybody here.
If we could teach him how to make bacon and eggs, we might have to turn him into an employee.
All right, slow
me
down.
All of the eggs and bacon that you have.
That's right.
Ever seen that?
Yeah.
So good.
Mm-hmm. All right, so today I thought Brandon and I, this is actually Brandon's idea last night, but to share our story about how we came to Christ. And I think we've got very different stories, actually, you and I. Yours is better than mine, I'll be honest.
What?
Yes, you've got a good story.
Well, we all end up in the same place. I don't think there's a better or a worse.
Yeah, but you know the conversion stories where it's like you're going to hell for sure, and you come around and you're like, oh yeah, Jesus is...
Flip side of that coin, 23 years of living like a heathen to freaking overcome bad habits.
That's true.
So, I'm still fighting them SOBs. See that? I just spelled out a cuss word.
You did. That's a Christian thing to do because we don't say it. So I figured that your story is better, so I'm going to let you go second.
All right, let's do it.
I'll share mine, but I also wanted to not just share our stories, but if we can think about how... maybe some challenges that we've had after coming to Christ, because there's, sort of this idea that guys, we get saved and then, there is sort of a light switch thing that happens a lot of times, for a lot of people.
Mine was more like a slow dimmer, like a fade.
You faded into Christianity.
Yeah.
But there is a change that happens, but then there's also just rough patches that you have. And that could be questioning your faith and trying to fall back into old bad habits, that kind of stuff, right? So my background is this. I was raised. I didn't do the introduction. I got to do the official introduction.
Friggin' amateur.
This double live thing is just throwing me way off. You guys don't understand it.
I'm not looking at any of it. I'm reading an email from a guy trying to sell me a portable timber mill.
Are you gonna buy it?
No. Oh. I just wanted to watch a video one time and had to give the guy my email address, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, forward me that email because...
It's back in 2008 when I thought the world was coming to an end and we'd all be living like the Amish, which may still happen, but, hadn't happened yet.
Yep. You'll be regretting the decision not to buy that timber mill.
Well, if the lumber industry goes out of business, the petroleum industry probably going to take a hit. How are you going to power the thing?
That's true. Well, there's interns there. If we get enough interns, they could potentially... go over into that as well.
Probably have a better shot at getting an intern to generate electricity than petroleum products. It takes a lot of science to make that happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. So
this is the weirdest beginning of a podcast, I think, in the history of podcasting.
I'm so off right now. I got a lot of Indian food happening in my stomach right now.
You got a crap?
No. I'm
sure?
That. It's messing with my brain.
If my eyes start watering, you guys will know why.
Welcome
to
the
intro. Do it.
I was about to do it just then. All right, you guys are listening to an Ask a Man episode on the Wolf and Iron podcast. Glad to have you guys back here. My friend Brandon McConnell and I am Mike Yarbrough. We're here to talk to you guys about whatever questions that you guys have about life as a man. And today, we're actually going to not answer your questions, but we're going to help you guys get to know us a little bit better. I think some of you guys have probably heard my story already. My background in coming to Christ, becoming a Christian. I think that was actually one of the first podcast episodes I did. I at least touched on that, I think. But I wanted to do a little bit more of a deep dive into this today, and I think it's going to be beneficial for you guys because Brandon and I do have different stories. We got different backgrounds. And like Brandon said, we end up coming to the same place. So it may not matter too much, but I think it's helpful because we don't want, I don't like guys to think that there's a certain way to go about it. I've heard a lot of different testimonies, come to Jesus stories, and They all happen in different ways. And so but then there's also the struggles that happen afterwards. I mean, you become a Christian, and then there's all the typical kind of stuff like questioning your faith and just trying to stay true to what you believe, understand what it is that you believe, and all that. So I figured I'd kick this off. I'm going to go first. And
let's kick it.
Let's kick it. So when I was raised in the South, Southern Baptist. On my mom's side of the family, anyhow. My dad's side of the family was Catholic, but I didn't really get exposed to any Catholicism type stuff until I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. I don't know if they didn't take me to mass or whatever happened. And
so you've never been molested?
I've never been, thankfully, I've never been molested. In a lot of ways.
Probably shouldn't joke about that.
Yeah, we'll scratch that out.
Edit that out.
But in seriousness, though, I mean, I probably was saved from some things by not being part of the Catholicism that they were a part of, simply because, I could go into what I don't agree with Catholicism. There's a reason that I'm a Christian, a Protestant Christian, but because it was very old school, kind of like organ music, choir boys, all that kind of stuff, and I would not have, fit in that way at all. But I grew up Southern Baptist, and Sunday school, all that kind of stuff. Kind of knew some things about Jesus, I guess, when I was a kid. Kind of had a general and easy belief in God for the most part. Just kind of came natural, like the supernatural world and all that. Really seemed true to me. It seemed to make sense to me from an early age. But it wasn't until I was 7 years old, which is not that long, right? 7. But I was 7 years old.
What took so long?
I know, right? I was sitting in church, old Southern Baptist church, and I still remember. I think we had the wooden pews and all that stuff. And there was a guest preacher. It must have been like a Sunday night or something like that. And I don't remember what the guy preached on, but he was blind. I remember that. And something about his story made the gospel real to me. He started talking about, I imagine, Jesus in a very real way and very personal way, not just in these old Bible stories. And I was getting hit heavy with it. And as a little kid, my granddad's sitting next to me, my granddaddy, and he passes me a note. He must have seen me just kind of actually paying attention. He passes me a note on the pew, and it says, "Jesus loves you." And, that was just like, it was big time confirmation. And I just got it. And so I went forward when they did the altar call, and I came forward and accepted Jesus as my Savior, and then was baptized shortly afterwards. And my story after that was that I had that initial kind of enthusiasm that a lot of Christians have, even as a young kid, to like learn a lot of stuff, to really be engaged. I wanted to be like a serious Christian, and nobody really took that up as like as a real, like nobody really invested in me.
Yeah.
I was just sort of hung out there as like, okay, you're a Christian, you're in now, and
you're in the club, your ticket's punched.
And then after that, growing up, I saw a lot of hypocrisy in the church. When we talk about Southern Baptists, I put that in quotes. That's one of the things that kind of comes along with that, unfortunately, is that there's a lot of the Sunday morning Christians, Wednesday Christians, potluck Christians, that kind of stuff. And I saw a lot of that kind of stuff and people not living it out. And then eventually I kind of stopped living it out as well until I was about 16 or so. Met my would-be wife, Summer, and she was a Christian, and she was going to a different kind of church. And
what kind of church was she going to?
She was going to a Church of Christ church. And that's not where we go to now. We're non-denominational now, but it was different because they actually were serious about, whereas the Baptists were big time free will, the opposite of legalism. What am I thinking of? Licentiousness. Yeah. There was a lot more legalism in the Church of Christ, but it was such a different type of thing that I'd never seen. And so they actually studied the scriptures quite a bit and really broke it into, went back into the history of the scriptures and talked about, just to really kind of gain knowledge from the scriptures. And that wasn't something that I was exposed to growing up. And so that kind of got me enthused about it again. And then when I was in my 20s, I guess I really kind of recommitted heart and soul, mind, body, all that stuff. But there was a number of years there as a teenager where I was kind of like, this is stupid, sucks, And so, there's more to the story, but
I feel that way sometimes in my 30s, so.
Yep. So that's pretty much it. I mean, as far as like the actual conversion story, I don't know if that spawns any questions from you or we didn't plan this out.
Any snake handling in your background?
Unfortunately, no.
Aggressively speaking in tongues and laying hands on people, causing them to pass out?
Nope. Didn't get a chance to see that. Okay. Sounds cool though.
Yeah. Have you seen the videos that people have made of like the guys doing the revival when they're like laying hands on people in like whole rows of people but they put it with like Megadeth or something.
Oh yeah, like the Hadouken.
Amazing.
Like the Street Fighter stuff. Have you seen that?
I've seen the Street Fighter one too, but I like the heavy metal one better.
Heavy metal's good.
And I don't know if it's Megadeth or not, but it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't have any experience with that. My church experience was basically we went from Baptist to Church of Christ, stayed Church of Christ for a while, ended up going non-denominational, but it was one of those things where it was like, it was called a non-denomination, but it was really a branch of Church of Christ that had just kind of gotten soft and didn't, on the Church of Christ stuff. And then we went full non-denominational, and then we kind of went Presbyterian-ish, but we don't really believe a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
So eventually we basically just...
you get around, young man.
I do get around. And it's been a challenge as a Christian to try and find any kind of church environment that I actually enjoy. I mean, I enjoy the people there, but I don't like sitting in church and listening to people talk. And I don't, sometimes I get mad about, the idea that we spend literally millions of dollars on these gigantic church buildings and raise all this money just to support basically a place to worship and come together. And that's helpful. But you just think, oh my gosh, like what could we do? We look at the size of our homes and we just think there's so much that ought to be happening outside of just the traditional church and a denomination setting and all that kind of stuff. Big time rabbit trail there, but
yeah, totally.
I've been discouraged a lot of times, and I've kind of backed away from churchianity quite a bit, and but now we're in a place where my son's enjoying it, my youngest, and it seems to be a good fit, but. It's still one of those things. It's still, for me, it's still church.
Are you still going to the church that you and I met at?
No.
Oh, you're not?
No, I haven't been going there for a while.
Oh, wow.
No, I'll take it back. I stopped going there. So Brandon and I met at a church.
Don't say the name of the church.
I'm not going to say the name of the church. Fine church. I mean, you guys can go there if you happen to know.
Well, they don't know what it is, so just move on.
All right, yeah. This church we went to. And I went there. Well, my family went there for about 10 years, I think. And then we left, went to some smaller churches. Didn't work out, ended up coming back for about a year and a half, and then ended up leaving again. And so we're kind of at another place that's just down the road. So
okay.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's always the humans that screw the church up,
Seems to be.
It's like if we could...
The Jesus part's pretty good.
The Jesus...
It seems to have it covered.
Seemed like he was a pretty squared away dude.
Yeah.
But, and I'm saying that it sounds a little irreverent, but anybody that knows me knows I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Yeah, people screw church up, man. Screw it up.
And you got to understand, I mean, any group that you're a part of, whether it's your business, your anything, right? It's liable to be screwed up by people. It's going to have its faults, and I think it's appropriate to try and weather those as best as possible. But I've seen a number of churches we've been a part of, which I don't know if that's a good sign, but have failed. And we were there as part of not part of it, but we were there when it happened. Like. We had one church we were going to that had a really good preacher guy, and then we had another pastor that was really good just discipling, loving people and caring about people. And the discipling guy ended up stepping down for some reasons that there were some other things going on in the finances and stuff he didn't like. Mm-hmm. And the preacher tried to cover it up. I've been in part of two churches like that, actually, where the preachers try to kick people out. And that kind of stuff, when that happens, I can totally see why people are like, Jesus is fine, but I don't want to go to any church. I get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
So if I could segue into my tattered past.
All right, let's do it.
The reason I never really got into the whole church anything was just because of a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now. And I made the same mistake that I think a lot of people make, where I saw what men said about God and what men did in the name of God and wanted absolutely no part of it.
Yep.
So I grew up, I guess the best way to describe it would be agnostic, kind of just like my dad was a hippie and just, whatever. Yep. Don't make any waves, just chill out. Yeah, just no guidance whatsoever as far as things of faith and things like that. And I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I'm glad I didn't die before I converted, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's the worst thing in the world for me now, because I am extremely skeptical of anybody that's trying to tell me something about God or about Jesus and the whole kit and caboodle.
Yep.
I was very skeptical of. Fast forward to September 23rd, 1999, my dad died, and the first thing that I ever prayed for, and I found out my dad had a heart attack on September 20th or 21st, and I prayed a very tear-soaked, emotional, wailing prayer that my dad's life would be spared. I didn't get what I wanted. I got pissed off at God, and I went to war with him, basically. And just anybody that ever tried to talk to me about anything faith-related, I would lash out very aggressively and with zero concern for someone else's feelings or what their intentions may have been.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I sold TVs at Circuit City, and I still remember there was a girl that I worked with. She was like a sub 5-footer, sub 100-pounder, and she saw the way that I was living, which was very much for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And she made the mistake. Now it's not a mistake, but in hindsight, she may have perceived it as a mistake of trying to talk to me about, things of faith. And I listened to her for a little bit. I debated her for a little bit. And then I finally looked her dead in the eyes and I said, F you and F your God, and walked away.
Wow.
So that's kind of what my attitude was. I went to bookstores and took the Bibles and put them in the religious fiction section. I really thought I was making a dent in the kingdom of God. And, that was my attitude. And I had some family members who were believers and things like that. And just, I don't know why they tolerated me. I have no idea why they invited me to Thanksgiving. Like, I don't get it. Then 2003, 2004-ish, I was in college. I was double majoring in professional piloting and air traffic control. And 9/11 happened. No, so it was 2001. Okay. It was 2001. 9/11 happened. My first semester in school, I was like, okay, I'm dropping the piloting side. I'm going to go full bore into ATC. And I was just about done. I was about to graduate. So this was probably 2003-ish.
Yeah.
When I was just about to get my ATC certificate, go to Oklahoma City and finish my training. And thank God that didn't happen, because I'd have been miserable, but that's another story. I woke up one morning to the sound of my phone ringing, and I picked it up, and I was like, well, I couldn't read the screen of my phone to see who was calling me. And I rubbed my eyes and looked again and rubbed my eyes and looked again. I was like, what the heck is going on? So I called my brother. We lived in the same house at the time. I called my brother, and I was like, hey, man, I can't see. Can you take me to the eye doctor? And he's like, yeah, okay, let's go. No big deal.
Yeah.
Get to the eye doctor. I didn't think it was. Get to the eye doctor, and they did what's called a visual field test, which basically points out how much of your visual field is blocked out. And 80% of my visual field was gone. It was just black. So they had me stare at a dot in the center of a screen and push a button every time I saw dots at random places around me.
Yeah.
And 80% of my visual field was gone. And basically the blurriness was my brain compensating to fill the rest of that in to try to make a full picture when you don't have a full visual field. Eye doctor called an ambulance. I rode in an ambulance from the eye doctor to the hospital to get MRIs and CAT scans. He thought I had a tumor. All kinds of different stuff. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. I had 4 or 5 MRIs. All kinds of neurological doctors, neurosurgeons. Just I went through the gamut.
Yeah.
All to get diagnosed with exactly nothing. They thought I had multiple sclerosis. They did spinal taps, all kinds of different stuff to determine that they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I took all that in stride. It wasn't really a big deal to me, and I don't know why it wasn't a big deal to me. It should have freaked me out, but I had health insurance and short-term disability, and I didn't really feel like finishing my degree anyhow, so I was like, whatever.
But you didn't know at the time, like this, did it, at what point did it become like, holy crap, this is serious? Like I'm going to be blind or something like that?
When it took a whole long time, more than 2 weeks to get better, I think is when it finally kicked in. And I saw the way my mom and some of my family members were reacting, and I was like, well, God, what's the big deal? I feel fine. I'm not sick. Like,
yeah.
I was going crazy in the freaking hospital because I had to sit still all day. You can't, go play. Yeah. They don't got a jungle gym or anything like that.
Right.
So, and I was in my early 20s, and anyhow, I guess it kind of gradually started to dawn on me, but I'm also kind of in denial about a lot of things at that point in my life too. So they discharged me from the hospital because they realized there's nothing we can do for this guy. He's not dying. We have no idea what's going on with him. And it's still to this day, I never got diagnosed with anything. At about the 3.5 week mark, my vision had improved to the point where I was like, okay, I can go to work. My brother can drive me back and forth. And then I think he did that for about a week. And then finally I was to the point where I could drive again. The whole thing went on by the wayside and never really thought much about it again. About a year later, I dropped from ATC school because I didn't have a lot of fight in me back then. I didn't want to fight back and do all the work to pursue a career that I knew deep down inside I really didn't want. Just didn't have the guts to admit it to myself or anybody else. So I used that as an excuse to drop out of college. And I was up in Pennsylvania. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. I should have mentioned that earlier. And I want to go back to my growing up before I finish the rest of the story too. Very, very Catholic dominant town. A whole bunch of legalism and idolatry. And if there's any Catholics listening, I apologize, but I am not a fan of the Catholic Church, nor am I a fan of most churches, to be honest with you, because what we were just talking about, humans screw it up. So anyhow, I saw a lot of things that I didn't like from the Catholic Church, and I was at war with God, and I was really making a lot of strides in my opinion. So why even bother to look at it or anything like that? All right, going back to present day, or not present day, but when I dropped out of school, was just working and just kind of very discontent in Western Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've ever been to Western PA, but it's kind of blah about 9 months out of the year. And a lot of my family was down here in North Carolina. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to move to North Carolina. So I did that. And I got around several family members who were at various different stages in their faith. And I just saw and felt something different. And I liked it. I don't know why I liked it, but I liked it. And gradually I started to look at things a little bit more, but the real catalyst was when the neurological whatever happened again. And at that point, it really freaked me out because it happened, 2-3 weeks. I got over it. I was like, I'll be fine. Yeah. But when it happened again, for some reason in my mind, it felt like this is something I could be dealing with for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I told and my aunt was always inviting me to church, but I told her I didn't want to go to church, but there was this thing called the Power Team going on at the church that they went to. You ever heard of the Power Team?
No, but that sounds like a rocking name.
I know, right? Like it's designed for little kids, which might say something about my maturity level. But anyhow, it's basically a bunch of freaking like beefy steakheads, ex-felons, bodybuilder, muscular, masculine types who do various feats of strength, and then
at church?
Yeah, at the church, and then they share the gospel at the end of it.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, and it was me and like my little cousins who are all about 10, 12 years younger than me, 15 years younger than me maybe, and they do this altar call at the end. And I'm 23 or 24 at this point. And they do this altar call, and all these little kids, like second and third graders, get up. And I also got up and went down there and received Christ at the end of this thing. And I'm like, I have no idea why I'm here, because I'm not even sure I believe all this, but I just feel like I need to be here. So I went down there, had some rando pray with me at the end of the thing, and I was like, I have no idea what any of this means. So I started researching this Jesus fella, and honestly, for a lot of my life, I didn't even believe, like, there's a lot of historical texts outside of the Bible that talk about Jesus. I had no idea that there was any proof outside of what the Bible said, which, for a lot of my life, I thought was just a big book of lies. So I started looking at it in a very systematic and methodical way and saying to myself, what is the most important thing that happens in the Bible? Let's see if we can look at that and prove that first, and then we'll go from there. Well, the resurrection is the most important.
That's the linchpin, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the linchpin to the whole story.
Yep.
So I started looking into the resurrection, and I was like, how would you prove the resurrection? I was big into science. I believe the whole evolution. I thought we came from pond scum, which, y'all, it takes a lot more faith to believe that bunch of malarkey than it does to believe that a man rose from the dead. But, everybody's got their own beliefs. I'm not trying to shove mine down anybody's throat. But the amount of faith and the mental contortion I had to do to believe that human beings evolved from single-cell organisms essentially making up pond scum, it's not even a comparison. So go back to the resurrection. How would you prove the resurrection? And I started thinking about my father. Well, how would I prove that Fred McConnell is my dad?
Yeah.
And I started looking, okay, DNA. Well, he was cremated. DNA is destroyed in the cremation process. All right. So basically anything other than hearsay evidence and pictures and things like that, scientific methods are out.
Right.
I could not scientifically prove that Fred McConnell is my father. So I said, okay, maybe we could apply, instead of a scientific standard, we could apply an evidence standard, an evidentiary-based standard to the resurrection of Christ. And when you allow for that standard, it requires faith. You may never get there. You may not believe it. But if you go from a scientific standard, which is the thing that most people seem to get hung up on, most of the stuff that happened in history, you can't prove it scientifically.
We're not doing scientific, Right.
So if you allow for an evidence-based standard instead of a scientific-based standard, the door gets a little wider.
Yep.
So what would you look at to make an evidence-based standard for the resurrection? Evidential proof of the resurrection. The fact that a woman was the first one to report the resurrection is huge when looked through the lens of culture.
Yep.
You think women are oppressed now? Go back to Israel, a couple thousand years ago. Women weren't allowed to, you couldn't be a woman that knew something that a man didn't know.
Yep.
So that's huge. We've got 500 witnesses, give or take, several of whom died very long, drawn out, painful deaths because they would not utter the words. They didn't see him risen again.
Yep.
Those are two of the big ones. And there's a lot more, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. So when you allow for an evidence-based standard, which is what I did, you still don't get 100% of the way there.
Sure.
It's still called faith.
Yep.
You have to have faith. And everybody's got faith in something.
Yep.
No matter what your worldview is, you believe in something that you cannot prove.
Yep.
So I took all the different worldviews, I reconciled them. I said, this one makes the most sense to me. I've got evidence of it in my life. I've got evidence of it through the culture of the early Jews. I've got evidence of it, the witness standard, just all this different stuff. And I'm kind of going in a lot of different directions, but that's how I finally reconciled it all. And if you can get there on the resurrection, maybe you can get there on the rest of it.
Yep. That's really good, man. You had me on just the edge of my seat, even though I've heard some of this before. I don't think I've heard it all out like that. It's just an incredible story. And I think one of the things that highlights is that people think that, and there are certainly plenty of people who match this description, that Christians are just a bunch of ignorant faith, sheeple that, we don't really understand why it is we believe what we believe.
Can I just say too?
Yeah.
I cannot stand somebody who believes in something but doesn't know why they believe it.
Yeah.
Was and still is a huge pet peeve of mine. Work it out, figure it out.
Well, you got to understand that as Christians, we meet more of those people than you guys do. Like if you're listening to this and you're not a Christian, Brandon and I and every other Christian who actually cares about their faith meet far more of these people than you guys do.
Cultural Christians. is what I
Cultural
call them,
Christians,
yeah.
exactly. And we can't stand it either. But that goes on both sides of it. I mean, it would be like even meeting an atheist that doesn't really understand why they believe what they believe, or, well, am I an atheist or am I an agnostic? I'm not really sure. That's kind of important. It's important things to know. But in any case, and actually, I tend to find that atheists are typically more, a true atheist, typically more, they're more thoughtful about why they believe what they believe. They just don't go deep enough into it.
Yeah.
Right. They just don't have to.
They don't ask questions beyond a certain point.
Right. Otherwise, they'd end up to be Christians probably. So that's good. Why are you checking your phone?
Sorry, dude.
You guys saw that, right?
Oh,
Instagram?
dude, I forgot. I forgot about Instagram.
So it's a great story and a great testimony. And so my digging into my faith came later on. So I was in my late 20s, probably early 30s when I got introduced to apologetics. And it was this, for those of you who don't know, apologetics is a defense of the Christian faith through reason rather than just pointing at the Bible and saying, here's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
It must be true. Which
That's
is
crap. That's laziness.
It's a laziness. It's circular reasoning. It doesn't work. But anyhow.
Although, if you go back and like really dive in to the text of the Bible and like the original text and the stuff that we found with the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that stuff, it's amazing how self-proving the Word of God is.
Oh yeah, that's tremendous.
It's once you, and it takes a long time to get there. I'm still not that smart, but it once you kind of see some of that stuff, it's just, I don't know. I think it's awesome.
Well, it's Christians. If Christianity were false, it is the most ridiculous false religion that anybody would ever come up with. Because what you're basically saying is there's this guy named Jesus. He's got to satisfy all of these old prophecies.
Lots of them.
And not only that, but he's also perfect. So nobody who knew Jesus could come forward and say, actually, Jesus was a real dick when he was about 14.
I saw him picking his nose this one time, and he flicked it on a girl's hair.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most ridiculous concept that anybody, if they were trying to falsify a religion, why would you ever come up with that?
Yeah,
I mean, why? It would make more sense to just say Jesus is one of many gods, and or something like that. Oh, sure, he was flawed, and but we all have flaws, and but we should just love each other and be peaceful and whatever.
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's less crazy than Scientology. Or more crazy. It's crazier than Scientology.
It's crazier than Scientology. But here's the thing, though. It's got to be crazy. That's one of the things I figured out. Like, you cannot have the scenario where there is a supernatural universe or world existence outside of our own that doesn't enter into our own as being crazy. It'd be like if an alien came down, right? And we had to kind of prove that.
Well, if it wasn't crazy, it wouldn't be a miracle.
That's true. Yeah. So anyhow, back to my. So I got introduced to apologetics when I was probably in my early 30s, and I was going through a lot of questioning stuff. Like, why do I believe what I believe? Sure, I understand that. I mean, I had faith. That's really about where I was, but I didn't really have a good logical explanation for a defense logically of why I believe what I believe. And so you covered a lot of ground there.
I would ate you for breakfast.
That's right. Yeah. But after getting into that, man, I'll tell you what, it's just, it's such a tremendous and powerful confirmation that what you believe is real. And if you guys are looking for resources on apologetics, there's a good book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. Have you read that?
Frank Turek.
Yep.
Stuff.
I think he was actually a charlatan at one point, if he's not still.
He still is. He lives in, he actually puts a class on at Grace Covenant in Cornelius.
Okay. Good deal. Ravi Zacharias, he's fantastic. Probably one of the best apologists there is today. If you go to YouTube and just look up Ravi Zacharias.
I wouldn't want to debate the color of the sky with that dude.
No, he's amazing. But there's a number. Actually, if you just go search for either of those guys or just look for apologist, you'll find there's actually an apologetics Bible I just got. And it kind of goes through, as you're reading the Bible, there's different apologetic and logic kind of behind and tying things together. So pretty cool. So there's a lot of resources out there for you guys. If you're questioning your faith, if you're wondering, why do I believe what I believe? How do I get more sure of this? You know,
Do you know who Vodi Bakum is?
that sounds no.
All right. Vodi Bakum got my attention when I
Okay.
heard him say, the resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most well-attested fact in all of ancient history. And then he goes through and, all of the ancient history stuff and compares it. It's not even close.
I mean, compared to any other kind of thing that we would teach in school as a historical fact, and we've got like 2 documents,
Yeah.
right? Whereas with Scripture, we've got thousands, literally thousands of letters that have been.
Yeah.
I think I heard it one time. It may actually be in that book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I'm not sure, but I think I said that we have enough just letters that people have written to each other that contain quotes of Scripture to make up like 95% of the New Testament
That's crazy.
that we recovered. And yeah, it's nuts. But so that's my story. That's your story. What kind of challenges have you had since becoming a Christian? So how old were you when you became a Christian? 20 something?
I was either 23 or 24.
So you kind of went through that. You talked about how you went through the, do I really believe what I believe? Why do I believe it? And so you kind of went over that. Since that point, since you kind of became convinced and you felt like you were a true Christian, kind of what's happened since then?
I was very naive. I literally thought, oh man, I've got Jesus on my side. Life's going to be easy now. And that's pretty much in direct opposition to all Scripture. I just hadn't read that much of it yet.
Yeah, you got that far yet.
Yeah. So life. In many ways, life as an atheist was easier.
Yeah.
Not better, but easier. Definitely not better. I don't fear death the way that I used to. I just kind of accepted, well, when I die, I'm going to heaven, so I don't care.
Yeah.
Kind of, if I didn't have kids, I'd be like, oh, let's get it up. Come on, get it on with it. Let's go.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Maybe extreme sports are the future for me. So yeah, like I said, I was just very naive about the day-to-day life of a follower of Jesus Christ. I thought it was all sunshine and rainbows, and God will test you.
Yeah.
God will test you and refine you, and usually it's done through pain and hard times and trials. And
Yep.
Yeah.
Jesus says that he came to give us life more abundantly, but he didn't say make our circumstances easier.
Yeah.
And those are 2 different things. I think a lot of times we think, oh, life more abundantly. Well, that means easy.
Yeah.
Bank
account's always going to be full.
Abundant life doesn't usually end up being easy. That's what I found.
No, it doesn't.
You get to live out life with all of its challenges and stuff like that, but then you got Jesus right there.
Yeah.
And you have other Christians, other brothers and sisters, and grace through them
Yeah.
in your life.
And I look at people talking about storing up treasures in heaven and things like that, and I'm pretty sure I'll be sweeping the floor in heaven, but it's okay. I'll probably be sweeping the floor at your house.
Yeah.
But I'm all right with that. I don't care. As long as I'm not going to hell, good to go, baby.
You said you're going to be hanging in my house in heaven?
No, I'll be sweeping the floor at your house.
Okay.
I'll probably be your manservant.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think so. Everybody's got their own house. There's a lot of, this is one of the things that Christians kind of get into sometimes. What does the after here look like? And there's there's heaven, right? Different place, streets of gold, all that kind of stuff, which is
Apparently it's a big cube.
a big cube.
Yeah, I was reading some description of heaven one time.
Okay.
It sounds very cubical, but
That's
not like a cubicle, but like having cubic.
Huh.
Anyhow.
But then there's also the new earth, right? So there's God comes in and he basically wipes out all that there is, restores things the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
We have different bodies so that we're able to basically operate kind of like angels, where we can kind of go back and forth between heaven and earth.
Cardio.
No more cardio, baby.
Yeah.
And
eat all the carbs you want.
I don't know if there's carbs in the new earth. There should be.
Do people poop in heaven?
I don't know. Well,
These are the kind of things I think about. Like I think about Jesus pooping.
Yeah. Well, he had to while he was here, but does he miss it?
I doubt he misses it. I mean, it's I don't know.
When you're done, it feels great.
Better things to do.
But yeah, this is kind of a time suck. But then
And
you got eternity.
He was
so
around before toilet paper. Just saying.
That's true. So we don't really have all that worked out. That's probably that's the apologetics, level 300 class or something. I don't know.
This is like a level kindergarten.
Oh, is it? There's no poop in heaven.
We're talking about Jesus pooping.
So some things we haven't got figured out. But
You know what I've reconciled? You know what I've come to?
Yeah, go ahead.
even if I could come up with the words to adequately describe heaven to you,
Yeah.
you haven't come up with the brain to fathom it yet.
I think that's true.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I think that, some of the things that have been kind of cool, just a little side note here, some of the movies that have come out lately that have been more sci-fi or more science-y kind of in their, in the way they portray things, they have creatures in there sometimes, which are kind of like angels.
Yeah.
But they're these kind of glowing, transparent sort of figures or whatever. And they don't call them angels in the movie, not every time, but you kind of get that's what they're alluding to. But it's when you look back at Scripture and it talks about when somebody's trying to give a description of angels or of heaven, right, and they're having a vision, they use a lot of words like it's sort of like this, it's kind of like that. It has the face of this, but the body of that, and the face was, the legs were like bronze, but the abs were like metal, and the face was like, whatever. And I think that's them trying to say, we're not really sure. We can't really describe what we saw.
Yeah.
We can't really describe what it is, that it's something other than anything else that exists here on earth.
So do you believe stories of people who allege that they've been to heaven and came back?
I think so. Yeah. And I think that
I'm torn.
Paul, I go back and forth on it. Paul has talked about it. Basically having visited the different heavens, and but I don't know. When I say different heavens, I mean there's like here, and then there's like the heaven in the sky, and then there's the celestial heavens, and then there's and obviously it's not like a vertical. You just keep going
Don't
up.
Don't forget my Rubik's Cube heaven.
And then then there's Brandon's Rubik's Cube heaven.
No, there's something in the Bible where it's describing heaven, and it's like this long, this wide, and this high, and it's all the same number, so it's a cube.
Well, it's one of the apologetics Bible that I have, when it talks about numbers and how numbers are used in the Bible. And one of the things it says is that there are certain places where numbers are very specific, like money, like 30 pieces of silver, that kind of stuff. There are other places where numbers are very specific, like in measurements of like the ark and stuff like that. There are other places where it's kind of, they're basically just trying to say it's big or it's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so
my boys are getting so big. Got one of them up to 1.5 cubits.
I mean, I think they said some cultures for the longest time didn't have counting past 2. They had 1, 2, and many. That was basically their numbers. And
that's horrible.
I know.
These are the people that built the pyramids.
You didn't have a lot of stuff back then. I guess they just didn't have things.
Yeah.
We got 2 kids, 3 something, 4, 10. I don't know. We got a bunch of kids.
Many.
We have many kids. Oh well, you're doing really well.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I don't know where I was going with any of that stuff.
No, I just know it's gotten silly.
So there's a lot of stuff that you still question as a Christian. What happens when you die? That freaks a lot of people out, actually.
Yeah.
They think, well, if there is an after, what does the after look like? And sometimes I think for people, the idea that, the naturalist thinks when we're done, that's it.
Yeah.
It's not any different than when I wasn't here.
That's sad.
It is sad. And it doesn't feel right. I don't think, in my gut, it just doesn't seem right.
Seems like a lie.
Yeah, it seems like a lie. All right, so that's my story. That's your story. I'm trying to think about a couple of challenges that I've had. That's what I want to go to.
All right, do it.
Some of the biggest challenges were around when my kids were young and sick.
Yeah.
And my wife was also sick, and they were dealing with things. Both my kids were born on the autism spectrum, and my wife had allergies. My kids had allergies to everything, just about. Seemed like every year after year just got worse and worse. We kept whittling down all the things that they were allowed to eat or could eat. And I went through a number of years of praying and having people come over and pray and lay hands on my kids and anoint with oil and just trying things in faith. And we did a number of things that, as a Christian, you're kind of like, God, I'm doing the things that I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Why are you not, blessing me? Why are these blessings not coming down? Why are things not changing? Why, this is the way it's supposed to work. If I pray that this mountain should be moved and tossed into the sea, well, I'm not asking for a freaking mountain. I just want my kid to feel better.
Yeah.
And that ended up really I got a lot of bitterness from that over the years. And we ended up having that resolved. I don't know, I may have mentioned on this podcast or something. We went down to a conference called Be in Health. I can't fully endorse all of it, but basically went down there, had just a really great experience, kind of introspective type of stuff and getting right with God in a lot of ways. Came back from that. Kids were healed and probably 90% of their issues. Same with my wife. My bitterness was gone. Had just tremendous fruits from that. And so one of the things that it taught me, though, just going through that whole experience, was that there is a relationship of our faith with God and what we believe in his goodness, and how blessings kind of just, as part of the design, just sort of flow through us and come. So, for example, and this actually may tie back into your eye situation. A lot of my kids' issues, and we don't have time to go into this, from all what we could observe, had a lot to do with my wife's fear and anxiety and my bitterness. And once my wife and I took care of that, we came back home. My house was totally different. I mean, my kids, we dropped all kinds of medicines. My kids were anaphylactic to eggs. So they didn't have eggs for years. We had them tested before we went on the trip, because I was like, I just want to make sure that, know what we're dealing with. Still, all the allergen stuff said, nope, don't do any eggs. Come back.
Takes out a lot of recipes.
Takes out a lot of recipes and a lot of flavor. Come back from that. My dog's healed in some kind of way. I can't explain that. My kids are just different kind of energy in the house. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
My wife's happy. I'm happy. Things are good. The kids start eating eggs like crazy. Totally fine. They're back on corn and everything else that they hadn't been able to eat for years. And so, and a lot of that just had to do with just our relationship, my wife and I, relationship with each other and relationship with God. Yeah. And it just kind of flowed down into our sons. And so I was going to ask you, since becoming a Christian, have you had the eye thing happen again?
I have one time.
Okay.
Year and a half, 2 years ago. It happened for a half hour. I've been through a lot.
Yeah.
I've been through a whole lot in the last couple of years, and just freaked out, stressed out, flipping out, trying to solve problems on my own. And here's what I determined. That is God trying to get my attention.
Yeah.
I literally was driving down the road. I noticed what the crap is going on. I can't see, pulled over, and I prayed for about a half hour solid, opened my eyes, saw fine, drove home.
Yeah.
Atheist Brandon would laugh at that and think, oh, what a stupid, he's just making that up, whatever. And I really don't care if you believe me or not. That's what happened. And it even, like, having gone through 23, 24 years of atheism, it feels silly to say things like that, because it's like, there's definitely people out there that over spiritualize things.
Sure. Yeah.
But I also don't want to under spiritualize things. Like, you see the guys that are doing the crazy speaking in tongues and the dancing with snakes and handling snakes and all the different things. Or the Amish won't take their kids to the hospital because, they'll just pray for the Lord to heal them. And there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of over spiritualization things. And I feel when I'm telling you that story that I just told you, like it's me just oversimplifying and spiritualizing something that could easily be explained by science. But science had a 3-week whack at it back in 2003. Couldn't figure jack out. So that's where I'm at. I might be wrong, but
well, I mean, we had the same thing. I mean, we had all kinds of doctors and scientists,
exactly,
on our stuff too, and couldn't solve it. And but at the same time, just praying for a miracle wasn't getting it done. And there is something about our reliance upon God, our trusting in Him, our believing in Him and who He is.
Yeah,
I think straightens things out.
And I think a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking that prayer is designed to align God's will with yours, like God is Santa Claus. Like, oh, dear God, please give me a Corvette. I just need this Corvette, and then life will be perfect. It's not the way it works. Prayer is to align your will with God's.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Yep.
That doesn't mean you don't pray for your kids to be safe and healthy and things like that. But like when I prayed for my dad not to die, that was not the will of God. And ultimately that's what turned me even more against him. But I was very naive in the way a lot of this stuff worked back then.
Yeah. Well, brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate your story.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate yours.
And appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate you guys listening. And
you don't even know if there's anybody there. You haven't got up to look.
I know. This is like, I don't even, maybe I didn't even start the live broadcast.
The battery died 10 minutes ago.
But in any case, we appreciate you guys. Look, if you have any questions, any feedback for Brandon and I, head over to wolfandiron.com/askaman. You can head over there and ask us some questions. Or you can join our Facebook group. You can go to wolfandiron.com/thegroup. and that'll take you over to our Facebook page where you can join there. And you listen to this podcast, guys. Throw it out there. Let us know what you got from this episode, and let us know what kind of questions you have about your faith, wherever you are. I mean, actually, in the Facebook group, this is kind of interesting.
All right.
There are a lot of guys that are on the Odinism path.
What is that?
That's basically like worshiping Odin and the Norse gods and things that I would have associated very strongly with mythology and legend and all that kind of stuff. But there are actually a lot of guys that are doing that. And not to kind of rabbit trail and get into that, I just think it's interesting. And so I always like to hear why you guys believe what you believe. Not confrontationally. Yes, I want you to become a Christian, but I also kind of want to understand how your brain works and how you kind of put this in the same perspective that Brandon and I do, where we have a personal relationship with Christ and we believe in a true God that's real, and we have, evidence and that kind of stuff. How does that work for you guys? But whether that's the case or whether you're an atheist, let us know how you think, and let's have some dialogue there.
That was always the biggest thing for me. People wanted to debate and argue and confrontational.
Like you did.
I know better. Nah, I'm not like that.
I know you're not like that now, but I'm saying back when atheist Brandon was like that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
was talking about Christians would approach me like that.
Right. Yeah, no. And I'm not trying to swing anybody one direction or the other. It's more just, I really do want to understand why you think, and I think that if you're going to become a Christian, God's going to do the work on your heart. You're going to have some experience like Brandon did, or like I did, or like the millions of other people have, billions of other people have had, and He'll get you one way or the other. So I'm not worried about that.
And they tell two friends, and they tell two friends.
Christian, like multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
For God.
I want you on my team.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Talk to you later.